Okay, guys, welcome back. Key Knowledge 9, the penultimate key knowledge dot point of this outcome 2 in Unit 2, Marketing and Business. So today we are cracking on with a little bit of information, going into a bit more depth about public relations, which is the concept which we talked about in the last video, Key Knowledge 8. So here you can see this is what we're going to be talking about today. There's a little bit more to this one. So if we actually break down that study design dot point, it kind of breaks down into 3 areas, okay? So it wants us to know about planned public relations, then crisis public relations, and then the importance of maintaining positive relationships with our customers. So that's a process we're going to go through in this video. Talk 1, then 2, then 3, and then job done. So first off, planned PR, okay? So this is a proactive approach to PR, okay? Getting on the front foot in terms of controlling any communications or messages that are being sent out to the public and the media, okay? Staying one step ahead of the game, managing the process rather than, managing it proactively rather than being reactive. But sometimes we do need to be reactive, which is when we get to the crisis shortly. So there's a range of strategies that a business can use when taking this proactive, planned public relations approach. And I will give you a few examples now. So the first strategy that you might undertake is media and press releases. So this is simply creating and distributing written statements to both the print media, the electronic media, and this is used to inform publics about a change in a business or just to gain media coverage in some way, okay? So this is actively writing messages, putting them out there to the media, messages obviously that you want to portray to the public. Remember, there's the use of that definition that we came across in the last video. Publics, remember, publics are groups that could be directly affected by what you're doing. The public, the media, are groups that can be directly affected by your activities. So publics, that's where we're seeing that really for the first time. So yeah, media press releases, pretty straightforward. Social media, obviously this is one that you guys are all across. So this is basically using the various social media platforms to inform, again, publics about any changes or to develop a positive image, basically. Really good advantage of this these days is the business, because businesses can respond directly and quickly to them, because obviously this social media thing is kind of instant. Sponsorship, another big one, financially supporting another organization in exchange for some kind of benefit. Generally exposure in the form of logos and slogans being displayed. There's a Formula One car there. Say lots and lots of adverts. So all of those businesses that you can see on that car will be sponsoring that particular Formula One racing team. And it's actually very, very expensive to do that. A tiny advert on the side of one of these cars will cost millions of dollars every year, because the exposure of Formula One, I think, is one of the highest watched sports on the planet. It's huge. So yeah, very, very expensive to do that, but that's something else you can do. On an Australian level, when you go to the G, you see those adverts going around the stadium. Again, that's basically sponsorship. And obviously your favorite sporting teams, obviously you'll be familiar with the logos. Again, sponsorship. Even the watch there, Uniqlo, Roger Federer is pretty famous for being sponsored by Uniqlo. And again, these high-profile players in sports like this will be earning millions and millions of dollars a year. Often you'll find some high-profile sports people, actually, the really, really successful sports people, will be earning vastly more through their sponsorships than they will actually through their earnings through the sport. So if they're worth so many millions and millions of dollars, most of that's actually come through sponsorship rather than either their wages or their prize winnings. So hugely expensive for businesses and a real benefit to those sports players. Here's an example, the LS Ice Bucket Challenge. You'll all be familiar with that. That was one of the most effective viral campaigns we've had probably ever. While social media was the medium that used, the goals are rooted in pure PR, okay? Generated $115 million for the ALS Association in 2014. It's a lot of money. Example 2, IKEA stay-at-home campaign. So when we went into lockdown a couple of years ago, all around the world, IKEA saw the opportunity to encourage people to stay at home and enjoy doing so. So obviously there was a lot of negativity around it, and they kind of flipped that around. So the brand launched its At Stay Home campaign, and it focused on the feelings of comfort, nostalgia, and togetherness, which, to an extent, people probably had lost. Naturally, we can improve our spaces quickly and affordably with IKEA furniture and home goods. So this is a brand, obviously homewares. People are at home, kind of flipping lockdowns around and kind of capitalizing on it. Very, very clever. Zara shop from home campaign. Again, this was lockdown thing. International retailer Zara capitalizing on the stay-at-home trend, promoting the idea that fashion is important everywhere, even at home where no one sees it. So again, just another example of quite clever use of social media. Crisis PR. Now, I actually mentioned this in the last video as well, and this is where we're responding to something that's happened. So we're reacting. So this is a reactive approach to PR, where you need to act quickly and respond to some kind of an emergency, such as perhaps product failure, product recall, some kind of negative social responsibility incident, or some kind of negativity in a story maybe that's got out there into the public. Now, if you remember, we watched that video in class on neuromarketing, and there was obviously that big focus on McDonald's. And if you remember, the journalist kind of cornered the head honcho of Macca's in France after that conference and started putting all these questions, and he was denying everything, and then in the end he called her, said, right, this interview's over, but he said, look, if you write to us, we will respond to your questions. And then he got a letter, and a couple of days later they put that PR guy in front of the journalists, who tried to, while he didn't deny it quite as flatly as the head guy had done, he was putting a spin on it, and trying to turn it into a positive, make it all, sound not quite so negative. And I think I said at the time, that was classic crisis PR. Some negativity had perhaps got out that McDonald's didn't want to permeate too far. So they quickly jumped on it 2 days later and tried to kind of crush the story. So yeah, that was an example. What you were looking at there was basically crisis PR. So in this scenario, business needs to act quickly, but carefully, being at all times aware of any backlash that might result from the various publics. And in some situations, there might even be the threat of legal action. Okay, so you have to manage this very, very carefully indeed. And the problem is, because it's reactive, you're reacting to something that's happened, which is beyond your control often. You don't see it coming, so you've got to deal with it quickly. So if it happens, you just got to deal with it, okay? But there is a way in which businesses can kind of be prepared and ready for this sort of thing, or at least be a little bit more prepared. And that is by preparing a crisis management plan, okay? So you just have a plan you put together that if something happens, there's kind of a process that you can follow. So, some kind of negative PR gets out, something has happened, you need to manage, it's like damage limitation, okay? You need to manage this process. You can quickly pull out the crisis management plan because this is all happening so quickly and it's moving. It's useful to have something that just kind of guides your actions, so that, you're not caught short, and you kind of have a bit of a plan to follow. Obviously, because this is an emergency and you can't foresee what might have happened, you'll need to tweak it, but at least it gives you a bit of a process that you can follow if this happens, okay? So if any unexpected negative publicity has occurred, it gives you that if you have a crisis management plan sitting there, it kind of gives you the best chance of coming out of this situation unscathed, or at least less scathed than you might have otherwise have been. And that plan would include responses to such things as this: so who's been effective, who's going to be responsible for handling this crisis, what information do we need to get out there, what other questions might be asked, When should an initial response be provided? Again, speeding on it, particularly with social media and how quickly this can get out there. You don't want to be hanging around here. And then when should updates on the situation be provided once that initial response has been given? Okay. Now, the next part of going back to the study design dot point here, customer-based relationships, and it says that the importance of maintaining a positive relationship with your customer base. We've actually talked about this a couple of times through various other videos here. And it's not rocket science to understand that maintaining a positive relationship with your customer base kind of makes sense. But also they're the implications if a relationship is not maintained. So that's what in the next few minutes we are going to focus on. So the benefits of maintaining positive relationships with your customer base, and then what can happen if you do not manage to do this. Okay, very simple. The benefits of maintaining positive relationships with your customer base. I don't think any of this will be a surprise to you. The perception of the business is enhanced, leading to increased loyalty by your customer base, which is obviously a good thing. If your customer base is more loyal, they're going to stay part of your customer base and potentially buy even more from you. The reputation of the business increases, obviously a good thing. All of those things obviously lead to an increase in sales and potentially profits. If your customer base spreads the word, then your customer base increases. And if you think about it, it's like a snowball effect. This process just keeps evolving. And all of that leads to an increasingly competitive business in the marketplace, and one that is likely to continue to meet your business objectives, such as making a profit. Okay, pretty straightforward. So now finishing off that key knowledge dot point, what can happen if we do not do this? Okay, well then this is kind of the flip. So your customer base is going to start to shrink because people are going to start purchasing from elsewhere, from your competitors. Okay, so your customer base is going to reduce. Fixing a damaged reputation is really, really difficult and can be potentially very expensive. So you definitely don't want that to happen. If word spreads outside of your customer base, it can be even more difficult to convert new customers. Okay, it's already much easier to maintain existing customers than to convert new ones, but it will be even more difficult to convert new ones if the perception out there of the business is a negative one. So it's going to be really hard to grow that customer base. Obviously, that leads to lower sales and profit, and all of that leads to an increasingly uncompetitive business in the marketplace, and one that is unlikely to meet your business objectives. Okay, pretty straightforward. That is it for PR. I will see you in the next and final video for outcome 2. Cheers for now.